Tech Cocktail Sessions, educational and inspirational talks from experienced startup founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders.
Ben, thank you for joining us here today. Last time we were on a stage together was in Las Vegas at our conference, Celebrate, where you interviewed Mr. David Copperfield. That was pretty awesome. You talked about your new baby, right? You have a baby?
I have a, yes, baby is the book.
Right, the book. And, and basically it ends in ology, which is similar to a book that I wrote. And it basically tell us a little bit about the book and what kind of, how that all came together and what inspired you to write it.
I feel like I need to grab it out of the bag so I can...
Yeah, you should have a book.
I always have a book on.
Yeah. Whoa, careful.
There we go. I'm interactive like this.
Does he have your attention yet? Whoa, careful. This stage is permanent.
Look at that. That's already, I'm already moving the stage all around.
Yes. This is somewhat dangerous.
So, to answer your question before...
Yes.
Captivology is... My new book came out last month. It's on the science and psychology of attention, why we pay attention to certain people and products, but most of all, how you can utilize that knowledge and that science to capture the attention of others. And so I went through over 1,000 different research studies and interviewed dozens of PhDs, psychologists, neurologists, others on the subject of attention to understand how it fundamentally works at a psychological and neurological level, and then how that gets applied in daily life. So I paired that with stories of how the masters of attention get attention for their ideas, their passions, their projects, and the psychological triggers that capture attention.
And there's some big names in this book. Who are some of the folks that you talked to or interviewed, or what are some of the things you did to do this?
Well, I interviewed over 50 people for the book. So
that's a lot.
People like Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook and Lena.
Not Ryan Sandberg. Anybody know who Ryan Sandberg is?
You're old.
I'm old. Cubs. There we go. There's one person.
No one the Cubs just make me sad still.
They do.
They lost the opener.
They did.
What are they, 1-1, 0-2, 0-10?
They canceled yesterday's game because it was too cold outside. It wasn't even raining. But that's okay.
That's a thing?
Yeah, just too cold.
Oh, that's pansy-like.
Yes.
Cubs.
Big fan.
So, where were we on that one?
Sheryl
Speaking
Sandberg.
of attention. So, Sheryl Sandberg, David Copperfield, as you mentioned before.
Yes, he's a magician. No, illusionist.
Yes, magician and illusionist. He goes more with illusionist.
Yeah, let's put that down so you can use
the
your
people
hands.
behind the Old Spice campaign, David. Let's see.
There we
Shigeru
go.
Miyamoto, the creator of Super Mario. Adrian Grenier from Entourage. Jeff Weiner, CEO of LinkedIn. Jonah Peretti, the CEO, the founder of BuzzFeed. Steven Soderbergh, the director. It was a long and extensive list across different industries. Everyone from street violinists to major CEOs to just understand attention at all these levels.
And as you did that, was there just boil it down? Is there one thread that you saw amongst these 50 plus individuals, or?
I mean, the first big thing was that I realized that the masters of attention don't try to get attention for themselves. They try to get attention for a project, a passion, an idea. And that's really what I wanted the book to be about. I didn't want it to be about, hey, you can be the next Kim Kardashian. I mean, I know some of you want to be Kim Kardashian. I can tell.
I do.
I could tell you especially want to be Kim Kardashian.
Totally.
Yeah, you're not wearing low cut enough. I'm sorry. But the real masters of attention, the ones who get attention over the long term and really build those billion-dollar ideas and change the world in some way, they're trying to get attention for an idea, a passion, something like that. One of the first people I interviewed for the book was Susan Cain. She's the best-selling author of Quiet, which is the book on introversion.
Right.
And I interviewed her because I'm an extrovert most of the time, but I didn't want to write a book for extroverts. I wanted to write a book that could apply to everybody and be applicable to everybody's life regardless. And I think I succeeded, I hope.
No, that's a great way to put it, kind of boil it down. I mean, it's a thick book, so you saved us a lot of time. But I still think you should still grab a copy of it.
You're just.
I'm getting.
I'm just gonna let him talk. We'll just let him keep going.
I just think that you should. I was trying to draw people's attention to this situation over here. Anyway, let's keep going. So let's talk about you wrote for Mashable for how long?
3.5 years.
How much? That's a lot of articles. You probably produced
2,442.
Wow, not to be exact. And you were then you were the editor, co-editor of that.
Co-editor, I ran West Coast.
Wow. And that brought a whole hip hop thing in my head the minute you said West Coast like that. But we're not going to go there. We're going to stay on point. What did you learn from that experience? Like just writing all that, covering the scene. Like what was the biggest takeaway?
There were so many, but
yeah.
I mean, there was a whole bunch of things I learned, interpersonally and maybe attention wise.
Yeah.
Attention wise in the book, one of the things we really did was really teach our audience. Like in the very beginning, when Mashable was just social media, it's far more than that now.
Right.
But when it was just social media, this was the era where there was no retweet button, and the most popular social network at the time was MySpace, and so I literally wrote posts like 20 ways to share a blog post. It still exists. And how to retweet. Like how to, and then retweet. And teaching people how to retweet.
Right.
But this was a necessary thing early on when people didn't know and most people didn't understand. But guess what? When you learn that knowledge, guess what they would apply that knowledge on first? Mashable articles.
Right.
And it's part of the reason where the Mashable articles really, really kind of grew. You've got to teach your audience the behaviors that you really want them to take, and you've got to reward them for those behaviors. And I mean, personally, it's just learning how to I became co-editor at 24. It was way too much for a 24-year-old even. So learning a lot about leadership and growth and controlling ego at a very, very early age.
Right. And so your background though was you went to Northwestern, right?
Last I checked.
What did you what kind of educated you for that position? Like what kind of what grew out of that?
What educated me for Northwestern, or what educated me for Mashable?
Mashable. What prepared you?
Nothing really prepared me.
You just figured it out.
No. So I mean, Northwestern was fantastic, and obviously prepared me as a writer. And
did you study journalism or
science and human culture?
Oh.
So the study of how science affects history, society, technology. So that was actually a very big prep.
So that could be why you're writing a book that has science involved, right?
It definitely was an influence in writing this book. But, a lot of it was just a matter of afterwards, you're given this kind of basic skill set, capability when you leave college. After that, it was kind of just applying it. And for me, it was just, I just wrote articles and I figured out, how do I get my article in the top of Dig?
Right.
And, I wrote on my personal blog, an article it was, I don't even remember. This is when Dig was important. Who remembers Dig?
It's super important.
Yeah. Some of you are like, what's a Dig? You're old. That's what's going to happen.
I know Dig.
So someday people are going to be like, who's a Kim Kardashian? And then you're going to feel really old. You can't imagine that now, can you? But I got onto Dig with my personal blog, and then Mashable sort of noticed, and I got recommended, and this was when they were small, and I grew with them, they grew with me, and it really, you learn a lot of these things just kind of on the job. You get the basics tool set, but after that, it's just a matter of working those long hours and learning what your audience wants. And, I even talk about that in the book, framing, and how we pay attention only to the things that fall within our specific frame of reference.
Right.
And you really got, the journalists who win, the CEOs, the PR people, the marketers who win are the ones who really understand the frame of reference of their audience and how to get their attention within that frame.
So how do you become Beyonce?
Well, step one, I suggest a good surgeon.
Oh yeah, for me, yes, for sure.
I also suggest you don't try it.
That's probably true.
I mean, it reminds me of those people who go crazy on the surgery. There's the Barbie gal who went to surgery to do nothing but look like Barbie. It's ridiculous. I wonder if someone's done that for Beyonce yet.
Probably. But on the flip side of that, in your book, you talk about her, and you talk about how not about surgeons, but how she launched, a surprise attack on everyone with her album that just crushed everyone's sales records. And
so let's go into the science a little bit of attention, and that'll help me explain.
Hold on, let me get this tweet. Hold on one second.
Oh God.
Hold on.
You're not paying attention right now.
Oh shoot.
I'm noticing those of you who are looking at your phones. Yeah. Unless you're tweeting.
Hold on.
I'm judging you.
There's a hashtag. It's over there. TC Sessions DC.
Oh look. Yeah. That's cool.
And there's a leaderboard.
If you're looking at your phone, you better be tweeting. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
At Ben Parr. What's your Twitter handle again?
At Frank Gruber. Everything he says.
Wait, at Frank Gruber, everything he says.
No,
that'd
they
a long
should be
Twitter
tweeting
handle.
everything we say.
Exactly.
Yes.
So there's 3 stages. So I'm going to go into the actual science a little bit. Because
Okay.
we've been going back and forth, and I just like having fun.
Everyone put your science cap on.
But in my model... What the...
Can't go out the door. That makes it sound.
It was a warning.
That was my science of how we fix that. I don't know.
You
Like,
can't
don't go out the door.
yes, you can't leave anymore.
Don't leave.
So
It makes. See, we talk about it.
So
Makes a sound.
the
All right, no more talking about it.
in my model, when I went through all the research, I really found there were 3 stages of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And the first stage is immediate attention. The second stage is short attention. And the third stage is long attention.
Mm-hmm.
And immediate attention, the first stage, is this immediate automatic reaction we have to things. It's, it's when we hear the sound of a gunshot or someone goes, boom!
That's scary.
Everyone except her moved.
I moved.
I hope you're tweeting.
She is. I can see on the leaderboard. She's doing great.
Is the first stage of attention. It's a reaction to protect us from danger. So imagine if, like, you had to think about a car coming at you and you had to react to that. We'd be a dead human species. We're designed to automatically avoid those threats by the immediate attention. And then we have second stage, which is short attention, which is our short-term interest, which is our conscious focus on something. And it's controlled by a memory system called working memory. And attention and memory are intrinsically linked. If you don't remember something, you didn't pay attention to it. And so a lot of attention is really about getting people to remember. And so this working memory system helps us choose which things we pay attention to in the short term, and then which things get encoded to long-term memory. And then the final stage, the stage that really matters for Beyonce, is long attention.
Right.
And long attention is this long-term interest we have in certain people and products and ideas. It's the kind of attention that lasts for not just minutes, it's the kind that we last for hours, centuries, lifetimes. And in the case of a Beyonce, as you remember, she was able to drop an album without any marketing at all. And she got it platinum by merely putting out one Instagram post about it.
Right.
And a viral sensation. And part of the reason was because it was a unique way to launch a book. You're not supposed to do it that way, and that's a trigger in my book I call disruption. But the bigger thing was that she's built this long attention over time with her audience. You know who Beyonce is, but not because she suddenly burst on the scene, but because she spent basically 2 full decades working to build up your trust and working to build up a relationship, starting with Destiny's Child and then her solo career. And she's been doing this for forever. And as a result, she got to a point where she didn't have to go to you for the attention. You went to her. And that's the level you want to eventually get to and build up to. And a lot of the book discusses how you build up to that level of attention.
No, it was a good lesson for me when I create my album, for sure.
Can you sing a song from it?
From that album?
Yeah.
No. I wasn't one of those 5 billion people that downloaded it, if that's what you're asking.
Well, we'll have to listen to it later then.
Together. Yes, we'll do that. Karaoke. Okay, so next up, I want to talk about, continuing on that same line of, we were talking about media in general. Everyone know what clickbaiting is? Okay. That's kind of been a trait in new media, as you've seen things grow. Like, there's a lot of folks, and just so everyone understands that, it's literally, I'm going to use a simple definition, which is, something that is out there. It's a link that you click on and maybe it doesn't have the payoff. But you're seeing a lot of media companies rely on that. So I'm not going to name any names, but there's things that might be interesting on a link, but not necessarily on a title, but not necessarily have the payoff. Is that something that, how do you respond to that when you think about attention in general? Like, obviously that's going to grab people's attention, but not the payoff. Like, do you think that's hurting like journalism in general, or what's your kind of overall thought about click?
So I talk in the book about delivering on your promise, and this is part of a different trigger in the book. I talk about the mystery trigger. Part of these, the reason why these kind of titles work is because there's a mystery involved with, you won't believe what this person did after this person did X.
It was amazing. Oh, keep going. Okay, sorry.
But you have that
and then
sort
it's
of thing.
A link, and then it's.
But the problem is, if you don't deliver on that promise, what happens is attention immediately dies. And so one of the very first people I actually interviewed was Team YouTube, the YouTube team. And the thing they told me was that you have to, within the first 15 seconds, and really in the first 5 seconds, you have to deliver on your promise of what the video is. So if you have a title of, say, Russian meteor exploding in sky, if you don't have that or something showing that in the first 15 seconds, they're going to go away. Like, if you had someone explaining for 30 seconds, they're about to show you a meteor, everyone bounces, like the vast majority bounce. And so it's always about delivering on that promise, especially in a world where we have so many distractions. will quickly move away. And the problem is that some of these sites don't deliver on the promise and they've faded away. Others actually do deliver on that promise and they've stayed relevant, you know?
So that's how you build that long term.
Well, like BuzzFeed, regardless, like when they have an article, they actually deliver on the promise. Yeah.
Right.
You have the payoff.
Right.
And BuzzFeed is a great example of a company that has lasted and continues to thrive despite all of its other competitors falling by the wayside.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. My favorite is like, we found Bigfoot, and it's literally a picture of a Bigfoot.
Where did you see that one?
Actually, I just made that up. That's terrible.
I hope you never run a media site.
Yeah. That would get some clicks if I did that. We should do that.
Yes, he's about to announce the new vertical, which is I know what we're gonna call it. We're gonna call it.
Oh boy. Okay, so let's talk about so after Mashable and CNET for a little bit, you went on and created a fund, the Dominate Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you're looking to do with the Dominate?
That's his new site.
Panda Power. Yes.
Someone buy that domain right now. So, the fund was actually part of the reason why I did the book.
Right.
And so when I originally left Mashable, when I left Mashable, a lot of startups came to me for advice, and and a lot of investors came to me for advice. And what Dominate Fund does, and eventually my partners and I started, it's a small early stage venture fund. And what we do is we invest in early stage companies and we coach them on attention. We coach them on the press, the marketing, the customer and user acquisition, the virality aspect, attention. But really, this was why kind of the book happened, because this is what startups ask me for help on.
Right.
There's startups that can build great products, but they don't know how do we get users to come and try it and use it? How do we sell it to customers? It's the other half of the equation that is the very few people truly understand. And it kind of was the beginning of when I looked into this research and started thinking about this book.
That makes sense. Is there a specific vertical you're looking at, or is there anything that kind of excites you in the startup land? What are the services or kind of companies that excite you?
We just like to say we invest in the next generation of platforms. And so we invest what we think are going to be the technologies that are going to be running the future. For example, one of our better known companies is a company called UBeam. It delivers wireless electricity over distance using ultrasound.
Meredith Perry,
backed by us, Founders Fund, Tony Hsieh, Mark Cuban, Andreessen. But they're building the next great platform for energy. And we're looking at the next generation of platforms of money, of virtual and augmented reality, of even social. Just we're looking for that next generation of platforms, and then we're looking for founders that scale. And that essentially is, we want to be able to meet a founder and be like, this is the person who's going to be running that company 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Right.
He or she has the vision and has the capability to grow to be the leader to run it, Because when you look at all those quote-unquote unicorns, vast majority of them have the founder CEO in place. Uber, Facebook, Airbnb, Lyft, all of them. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And it's, I think it was Jason Fried said if you do something long enough, you become a leader in it or expert in it. He's kind of that, he's done 37 Signals now for how long?
A master at building sustainable business.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that makes sense. So as you look at all these different companies, I'm sure you've gotten pitched a bazillion times, if that's a real thing. Can you give us some examples of things that caught your attention, like subject lines or things when you were I know you're not writing as much now, or do you write at all?
I write. I'm trying to write occasionally.
Yeah.
I have a column with Inc. now, and
Nice.
I have articles that come out, and
Yeah.
I'm not. And if you don't ask me the question of am I going to write another book, don't ask me that for 4 years.
I'm not going to ask you that question.
You would know.
I
better.
will not ask you the question. It's that kind of you won't handle the truth. Do you get that?
Well, no, you understand the pain and suffering.
I
of writing
do
a book.
understand. It's hard. It's really hard to do. Oh, he's talking about. I wrote a book called Startup Mixology.
Yeah,
it's very similar to this, except it starts with startup.
You're
mixology.
underselling how hard it is.
Yeah.
You got to listen. My assistant gave me Amy Poehler's book.
That's a great book.
And if you read the introduction, it talks about just how much pain and suffering there is in writing a book.
It's actually amazing on Audible if you get that book version of it, because she reads that part and you can feel the pain, like the physical pain.
She has all her celebrity guest stars read different chapters.
Yeah, we know. We don't actually read. We just listen.
Hey, got my attention.
Yes. Okay, so what were we talking about?
You're asking me questions.
All right, so we're going back to what's caught your attention when people pitch you stuff, because I'm sure you've gotten pitched a bazillion things.
So the first thing, and I talk about some of these things in the book and elsewhere, it's more the things that lose my attention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there was an example, and this was just because the entrepreneur was green.
Mm-hmm.
They were emailing and they got my attention, but in not a good way.
Mm-hmm.
They were emailing some like my portfolio companies and like top tier CEOs who knew me to ask them to listen to their pitch so they could just get introduced to me. And I'm like, that's really kind of in bad taste, especially since this kid went to Northwestern and didn't do the research to figure out. Oh, by the way,
I went there too. Yeah, right.
No, well, like, by the way, there's like 80 people who could probably introduce you to me directly.
Right.
But you don't go to somebody and talk to them just so that you can go and get introduced to somebody else.
Right.
It's in bad form.
Right.
And so, like, at a certain point when I got 3 or 4 emails from my portfolio companies being like, who is this person? Why is he emailing me?
Right.
I had to, like, step in. And I'm just like, you can't do that. And, you know, and I had to, like, on the basis of that alone, I can't invest because you got so much to learn. So there is such a thing as getting attention, but that's negative attention. There is such a thing between positive and negative attention, you know?
So do your research, number one.
Well, so a slight tangent. So a couple years ago, and I should play the ad at some point. There was, you know, you all remember Quiznos, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, you laugh, I laugh too.
Wait, are they still around? I don't remember.
I'm gonna give you the answer momentarily.
Okay.
So Quiznos, they had this ad campaign a few years ago, and I'm gonna like find my iPad at some point. They had these weird mutant-looking like rodents, these sponge monkeys, is what they called them, next to the sandwiches, singing in the worst voices ever, being like, "Eat your sandwiches!"
I do remember that, actually. That was pretty terrible.
And it was terrible. It made no sense. Why would you want freak mutant rodents near your food? And to answer your question, Quiznos went bankrupt last year.
That's why I can't find them.
There is such a thing as negative attention. Absolutely. Now, like...
No direct correlation, though, between the ad and that, right? Or just in general bad taste?
No. There was absolutely. The sales went down. With like the ad was just a larger kind of... cosm
of what was going on.
There's a microcosm of what was going on over that company.
Wow.
Now, sorry, going all the way back to like startup pitches. Now, the things that really, really work is like, it's a couple things. And I talk about 7 captivation triggers in my book, by the way. One of them is reputation and how we pay attention to reputable sources and specifically experts and authority figures.
Right.
Now, the number one way to get an investor to pay attention is a direct introduction. And it's always been that way, and there's a reason for that. Because it acts as an immediate shortcut for people who are busy to know how to direct their attention. And you got to think in terms of we are very busy, and our attention is directed in so many different ways. We're always looking for shortcuts to direct our attention. And one of those shortcuts is when an expert tells us to do something or when a reputable source introduces us to somebody. It's an instant recognition and validation. Now, you don't have that. There's other ways to get their attention, but the biggest thing is you have to keep it simple.
Right.
The worst thing to do is to send and I had this yesterday was a 20-paragraph email.
Oh.
You think I'm going to read even 2 sentences of that?
Maybe if it's on Audible or some other channel.
No, it doesn't matter what format you put it in.
Okay.
You could put in a microchip that you implant in my brain and wouldn't read it still. But you have to be short and simple and sweet, and you got to lead with the validators that will make people will provide the shortcut to attention.
So cutting to the chase, getting an intro from somebody that you know, that you trust, is better.
Yes, but also the validators.
Right,
Things like, you know, like if you worked at a Google or a Cisco, if one of your advisors is somebody they know, that those things help immediately show credibility, and that's the first thing that's the first filter I have, you know.
Number one,
I have to feel like there's some kind of credibility here.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so you look for credibility.
At least in the initial stages, and then you kind of build up from there.
Yeah. That makes sense. So 27 paragraph emails are not a go. Don't do that.
How did it get to 27 paragraphs?
I added a few. Okay, so there's probably like an ending and a conclusion. So what's so my next question was literally, what's the next worst pitch? Is that one of the worst pitches you've ever gotten, or is there one that comes even worse than that?
I've had so many bad pitches; they all blur.
Have people sent you stuff? I've had people send me random stuff as part of that pitch. Have you had that kind of happen?
I've kept my private address. Mostly private, but yes, I've been sent, at least in Masterleaf, I've been sent everything from dildos to a fake bomb.
Ooh, that's not funny.
No, it's not. I've been sent like random everything. I think once we got like a envelope with fake white powder.
That's terrible. Why?
Because people are.
Did they put their return address? Because that would be the worst.
Some of them are pranks, and some of them think that they'll actually like pay attention.
Yeah.
People like buy Facebook ads to directly try to pitch me, even though I have ad blocker. I'm not going to see your Facebook ad, but they still try to do it all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah, you can directly.
So note to self: please turn off those ads. That was funny. Come on, this was funny.
But there's so many different ones. You wanted to ask a question.
Oh,
what's the most effective pitch?
Short and sweet.
I mean, yeah, short and sweet. And then after, like,
sounds like
there's been a few pitches that have got my attention a little bit more even. Like there was one where the guy literally made an app off of his platform for my website. He's like, "Here's the Ben Parr app," and I'm like, "Okay, you win. I'm gonna write about you." There was another time.
That was a validator without even being validated, right?
No, there was another time that a zoo sent us a quick video for Mashable's birthday of a rhino smashing a Mashable watermelon, and I'm like, I have to put that up too.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, that they definitely.
It's especially unique things that violate expectations in a positive way.
How did they even do that? That's the question.
Wait, they painted the watermelon Mashable, and
how did they get a rhino?
They're a zoo.
Oh, got it. Okay. Jeez.
I mean, you don't keep a rhino in your back closet?
I wish I did. I appreciate rhinos, but they're actually could be dangerous. Okay, so moving on, growth strategies. Let's talk about growth. So you see a lot of companies. You've invested in companies. Is there one strategy you think works the best for startups, like to help them get to the next level and eventually get more funding and maybe even exit?
There is absolutely not one strategy.
No secret pill that you take to make.
I mean that I had to write a whole book on it, and the whole book is not enough to go through the entire thing. But really, it kind of comes down to walking your audience through those 3 stages of attention. Is getting their initial attention, usually like either by some kind of interesting disruption or this keeps on doing that. I don't know.
I think someone was trying to get out the door.
Is that Ghost?
Don't even think about going out the door yet.
Is that disruption or something that really like perks their initial attention, and then it's getting people to stay. And so one of the things I talk a lot about, 2 of the things actually I talk about is the reward system of the brain and the power of acknowledgement. Now, everyone here has heard of dopamine, right? Dopamine is this chemical that everyone thinks creates pleasure in the brain, but that's not true at all. What it actually does is create motivation. And so what happened was there was a researcher who I interviewed, Dr. Kent Barrage of the University of Michigan, and what he did was he took the dopamine out of mice, and he wanted to find out what would happen. And what he learned was that these mice with no dopamine could still feel pleasure. You give the mice sugar water, and it would still feel positive feelings when you gave it sugar. But the problem was that these mice lost all motivation. They in fact lost so much motivation they all died because they weren't motivated enough to live.
That's terrible.
But the dopamine creates motivation to desire something and creates a wanting response.
Did they even want the sugar water after a while, or?
They didn't really want anything.
Oh, jeez.
So you don't. But what dopamine does is create motivation, and so your job attention is not about giving somebody the reward or the pleasure. It's the desire for the reward that creates attention. It's not the actual burger. It's the desire for the burger because you feel if I give you like a triple Big Mac, a bunch of us will probably feel bad afterwards. But we really desired it beforehand, and that's the kind of motivation system that works in the body. And so you have to find those kind of intrinsic and extrinsic rewards that motivate people over both the short term and the long term. And I talk a lot about, for example, how we're motivated in the short term by things like money, food, and sex, and they really do work, like scientifically. Like if you associate an object with money, eyes will automatically focus on that object more often, even when that object is no longer associated with money.
Right.
But
because they made that tie, right?
But it doesn't capture attention over the long term. And so you have to use intrinsic rewards like purpose and self-satisfaction, which is why, having a purpose at a career, having that kind of job that has, like you feel like you're doing something for the world, keeps you there longer because we're looking for those intrinsic rewards as well.
Right. That makes sense.
So it's kind of just like this the other thing I was talking about was is building acknowledgement with your audience. And now one of the things, so for example, the reason why Facebook, Twitter, others do so remarkably well is because you can get instant validation from your audience. Is
that
from your friends.
dopamine? Does we get a shot?
Yeah, because likes, comments, retweets,
right,
all those sorts of things, and it's a validation. It's a validation effect. I call it the validation society because it provides instant validation, and validation is a fundamental human need.
Right.
And the science shows that when those who provide us with validation and empathy and acknowledgement, we pay the most attention to. It's part of the reason why. We pay attention to celebrities because they represent an identity to us. It's not like it says something about you whether or not you're a fan of Justin Bieber or Kim Kardashian or Frank Gruber. There's an identity associated with that.
It's good.
Maybe not the last one, but
it's amazing.